So one of the most important elements of agency that we need to understand is the scope of authority. What does that actually mean? It means, what does the agent have the right to do? What areas will they be able to bind the principal? That's the scope of authority. And it may not be as clear-cut as what it first seems. So let's dive into it. So the first thing you're going to note is that there are actually 5 ways an agent can be authorised to act. It's not simply about what they're told. So this scope of authority, which gives us the boundaries for contracting or other legal relationships between the principal and the third party, is not just about what they're told they're allowed to do. There's actually these 5 areas. Now, we're not going to deal with one, which is a kind of unique one, which is agency of necessity. That is there, but we're not dealing with it in this course. We're going to look at express, implied, apparent, and ratification. So let's pop into the first one of those, express authority. Express authority is pretty simple. It's where the principal expressly authorises the agent. Now notice, this can be written or it can be verbal, but it's very clear that what authority that they have. In an ideal world, you'll want to state the duration of the agent's appointment, the precise scope of the authority, and what they're entitled to, any commission or payment for doing the work. Okay, so that's one way that we can have authority. Express actual authority. The second way we can have authority is when it's implied. Okay, this is called agency by implication. For example, if 2 people go into business, it's implied that one gives authority to the other to authorize deals on both their behalves. Okay, so that's an example, and we'll come to that when we talk about partnership law. Okay, so this can arise even though you don't know that it has arisen. Where it's more likely to come up in the real world for us is where an agent's given express authorization to do something, and then the law will say they get implied authority to do the things necessary or incidental to carry out the main task. Okay, let's go back to our coffee shop example. Now, just say I'm left in charge of the coffee shop. And then what happens if we run out of milk, right? So imagine that scenario. I'm in the coffee shop and we've run out of milk. Well, I think it's reasonable to say that there's implied authority for me to go out and buy milk, right? Buying that milk is incidental to running the coffee shop, even though I don't have anything in writing or anything that was said to me to say, yes, you're allowed to buy milk. Okay, so that's what we mean. Buying milk is kind of incidental to running the coffee shop. A different example from our coffee shop might be, just imagine a salesperson came around and they were selling new $50,000 coffee machines. Okay, now look, buying a new $50,000 coffee machine is not incidental to running the shop while the owner's not there. It's a fundamentally different task. So it wouldn't be implied that I would be able to buy that coffee machine. So it's not everything to do with running the coffee shop, right? I'm just there to run it while the owner's away. It's the things that are incidental to that running that I'll have implied authority about. Okay, now the most difficult area that we face in terms of authority is this one called apparent authority. Now, why is it so difficult? Okay, so one of the problems that law tries to solve is when someone has lost, right? So someone has lost and we have to decide who's going to lose. And so the law looks for who is the person who had most control over the situation, who should bear the risk of what's going on. So this is a central component to what the law is doing here to understand it, because sometimes this area might make sense without that core understanding. So this is apparent authority. And apparent authority occurs where the agent doesn't actually have authority to do what they did. But in some circumstances, the law says the principal will still be bound by what they did. Okay, let's get into when that actually occurs. Okay, so remember the relationship that we have. We have a principal, we have an agent, and we have a third party. Okay, now remember, the third party is dealing with the agent and can't see the principal. That's important to remember in this relationship. So, apparent authority occurs where the third party did not know that the agent didn't have actual authority. Okay, so this third party here must not know what the agent can and can't do. Okay. The principal held out the agent as having authority. Okay, for instance, they can appoint the agent to a particular position, or they could have given the agent authority in the past. Okay. Let's use a specific example. Imagine we've got our coffee shop owner, okay, and you've got you as the barista, and you've got the customer. Okay. Now, what does the coffee shop owner do to hold the barista out? Well, they employ them. They give them a uniform. Okay. They do all these things. They might leave them alone to run the shop. Okay. So even if the coffee shop owner said to the barista, you have no authority to do anything, you have no scope of authority, even if that's what the coffee shop owner said in terms of express authority, to a customer who doesn't know that, this third party, the customer who comes in, they would think a barista can do what a normal employee could do, right? That they'd be able to sell coffee, give them change, give them the key to the toilet, all these things. They would think that's what someone could do because that's what you would expect of a barista, right? So this is the situation we're dealing with. The third party doesn't know that the barista doesn't have authority. Now, if the third party knew, if the customer was there and they heard the coffee shop owner saying, you have no authority, okay, then the customer would know that they didn't. But most times you don't. The third party has no idea about the relationship between the principal and the agent. So that first condition is pretty easy to meet. The second condition is where the principal must do something to make the third party think the agent has authority. So here they're giving them a uniform, they're putting them in the shop, etc. Okay, so they have done something. Okay, so that one would be met. And then if the third party relies upon that and reasonably assume the agent had authority. Okay, so let's take a different scenario. Let's just say the barista sells a coffee machine. They sell coffee machines in this coffee shop and sells it at a huge discount, right? And so the coffee shop owner is going to lose a lot of money. Well, is the coffee shop owner bound to sell it? Yes, right? Yes. Why? The third party didn't know the barista couldn't sell the coffee machine. It's there to be sold. Why wouldn't they think the person there could sell it? Did the principal do anything? Yes. They gave them a uniform, had them there, etc. So they've held them out. They've left them in the shop. They look like they can sell it. Is it reasonable when you go into a shop to expect someone in that shop can sell you the things for sale? I think that's entirely reasonable. So therefore, they would be bound, right? Because there is apparent authority. So there is authority. It's apparent authority. It's not express authority, but it's apparent authority. Okay, have a think about that one because that one can be a bit difficult for people to get. What you've got to do is step through those three core elements. If all three are satisfied, the principal will be legally bound by the actions of the agent, even if the principal expressly told the agent that they weren't able to do it.